Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever found yourself maybe connecting seemingly disparate news headlines or societal shifts and wondering if there's, a deeper pattern or even a structured agenda at play?
Right, like there's more going on underneath.
Exactly. Today we're embarking on a deep dive into a document. It's titled Plandemic 2.0, the July 4th Bioterror Plot and Palantir's Master Plan.
It's quite a title.
It is.
Yeah.
And this source, well, it pulls together a fascinating, sometimes pretty unsettling narrative. It touches on the evolution of data surveillance, some surprising origins of tech giants, and a projected future scenario that, frankly, demands our attention.
Okay.
So our mission here is to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge from this specific material, help you connect some surprising dots the source presents,
Right.
and really leave you with a clearer understanding of the claims being made within this particular document. Not endorsing, just exploring what it says.
Got it. Laying out the claims.
So the source jumps right in, introducing this powerful concept it calls the technocratic state. It paints a picture of a future where human governance is sort of overshadowed by technological control,
Okay.
potentially leading to what it actually describes as a digital prison.
A digital prison.
Wow.
Yeah. Think about maybe the pervasive monitoring and social credit systems, like those seen in China. The document strongly suggests this vision is, well, antithetical to fundamental constitutional ideals.
So a direct clash with basic freedoms, as the source sees it.
Precisely. And then it makes a direct link
Okay, to what?
between this technocratic future and Palantir technologies.
Palantir.
Right.
It contends that the Trump administration allegedly tasked Palantir with significantly expanding the U.S. surveillance state.
Okay, so specific allegation there. What's the core claim about how?
Well, the source claims Palantir's AI platforms are designed to integrate databases across various federal agencies.
Integrate them.
Yeah, creating a unified data picture.
Right. And the key insight here, as presented by the source, isn't just about having a national database, potentially. It's how it alleges Palantir's AI platforms are designed to integrate disparate data points.
Disparate.
Like everything from your bank accounts and tax history to your social media activity. All of it.
Wow.
The source emphasizes that this isn't merely, data collection as we might think of it. It's the consolidation, pulling virtually every aspect of life under one surveillance umbrella.
Blurring the lines.
Exactly. Blurring the lines between private and public information to establish, and this is the source's phrase, unparalleled surveillance powers over American citizens.
Unparalleled surveillance powers.
Yeah.
The source then shifts its focus, right? To a key figure.
Yes. Peter Thiel, deeply connected with Palantir.
Right, and the document presents this nuanced, almost contradictory view of him. What kind of figure does the source actually portray Thiel as? How does that connect?
It's interesting. The source describes Peter Thiel as a phenomenal operator and a savant when it comes to intellect. So clearly acknowledging he's brilliant.
Okay, high praise there.
But then it also portrays him as being on the edge of amoral.
Amoral.
Yeah, due to what it calls expediency. The document suggests this means his guiding principle is, well, effectiveness, strategic advantage, often overshadowing traditional moral considerations.
So results over ethics, potentially.
That's the implication from the source, yes. And this framework, it implies, underpins his alleged instrumental role in broader surveillance and political efforts.
Like what specifically?
It explicitly claims Thiel financially supported Trump's election and was deeply involved in the political rise of figures like J.D. Vance.
The E-Vance.
Yes, noting Vance was, quote, paid for by Peter Thiel and effectively a canvas of Peter Thiel's. That's the claim.
A canvas. That's a strong image.
It is, and this portrayal, it gains further context when we look at Palantir's alleged activities during the COVID period.
Okay. How does that fit in?
The source contends the company was, quote, behind so many of the surveillance programs.
Behind them.
And monitoring systems to figure out whether people are going to take the shot or we're going to comply with orders. That's the assertion.
So tracking compliance during the pandemic.
According to the source. It further asserts Palantir received more government contracts under the Trump administration than, quote, any particular industry player.
More than anyone else.
That's the claim. But what's particularly striking, maybe, is the document's claim that this entire architecture for surveillance, it wasn't new. It was set in motion back in 1998.
1998. Wow. That suggests a much longer-term plan than most people might realize.
Exactly. A deep history, according to this source.
That's a truly intricate web the source is weaving.
Oh.
It suggests, a long history behind what might seem like recent developments. Makes you wonder about the bigger picture, doesn't it?
It really does.
What's striking is how the source traces these threads back decades, painting this picture of deeply rooted long-term systems. Let's delve into some of the historical examples that highlights they're quite telling about this evolution of data gathering it describes.
That's right. The document claims that life insurance companies.
Life insurance, really?
Yeah, like Swiss Re and Munich Re. It says they've been quietly collecting vast amounts of data on individuals.
What kind of data?
Behaviors, patterns, health records, even death actuarial plans, all of it. For over 25 years, it claims. Primarily operating out of Zurich, Switzerland, and Bermuda.
Huh. So hidden data gathering, basically.
That's how the source presents it, as a long-standing, somewhat hidden form of data gathering. And it introduces other historical examples too, like SAIS, Science Applications International Corporation.
Okay.
It alleges SAIS created the Chexis system, which supposedly tracked every check cashed.
Every check. Decades ago.
Yeah. And also Sabre, a program it claims tracked every airplane ticket and hotel stay.
So early tracking of movement and finances.
Exactly. Long before the internet made this kind of stuff commonplace. But what's critical here, as the source argues, is that these aren't just, isolated historical curiosities. No. They're presented as foundational pillars, showing a long-term, maybe coordinated effort to collect data and influence populations.
Okay.
And then the document makes a very specific and pretty bold claim about Oracle's origins.
Oracle. Larry Ellison's company.
That's the one. It says yes, founded by Larry Ellison, but allegedly it stemmed from a classified CIA project.
A CIA project.
Also called Oracle, supposedly at the Ampex Corporation back in 1975, described as a front door data harvesting mechanism.
Wow. So the source is basically claiming that the modern surveillance state has these deep, deliberate roots in intelligence operations.
That's the core assertion, yes, that it wasn't accidental.
Ampex Corporation.
Right.
The source then makes a connection there that I think many listeners might find really unexpected. What does the document claim about Ampex? And specifically, this alleged link to Dolby Sound.
Right. This is where it gets pretty wild. The source asserts that Ampex Corporation, which it controversially links to Operation Paperclips.
Paperclips, the post-WWII program bringing German scientists to the U.S.
That's the one. It alleges Ampex was actually a front for dark ops, specifically social engineering, dark ops, and surveillance.
A front, okay, and Dolby.
And here's the kicker. It alleges Dolby surround sound, the immersive audio we all know, was invented by Ampex as an acoustic program for behavior modification tied to mind control.
Wait, Dolby sound for behavior modification. That's a huge claim.
It's a massive claim. The document implies that the technical capability to manipulate sound frequencies was allegedly repurposed for covert psychological influence, a far cry from its public perception as just better movie sound.
Definitely.
And this perspective, it challenges that popular narrative. The Silicon Valley phenomenon just being brilliant guys sitting in garages.
Right.
It frames it instead as potentially covert operations.
Okay, so we've traced the source's claims from Palantir's alleged role today, back through decades of data collection, and even these alleged covert operations linked to tech origins. It paints a picture of a system evolving for a very long time. Mm-hmm. Now, with this historical backdrop laid out by the source, how does the concept of disruption fit into this, as more than just tech innovation, but as a social engineering tactic?
That's a key part of the narrative. The source delves into disruption, not just as, a business strategy.
Right, like disrupting an industry.
Exactly. But as a social engineering tactic, it links this idea to Lee Clow, CLOW, of Chiat Day Advertising.
The famous ad agency, Pulse agency.
Yes, who was Apple's market face and also linked to Steve Jobs. This approach, as detailed in the document, aimed to dislodge democratic systems and civil liberties through very subtle imaging. Think about how ads can subtly shift perceptions over time. The goal, the source claims, was to make the public embrace ideas that were actually inherently dissonant.
Dissonant meaning?
Contrary to their true interests or values, getting people to accept things they might otherwise question.
Okay, can you give an example from the source?
Yes, the specific example used is the iPhone or the iPod or the iPad.
Apple's products.
Right. Which allegedly created a consensus illusion, a situation where people were, quote, losing their identity.
Losing identity through a device. How?
The source points to the eye in the names, representing a little eye like surveillance. And it notes the original ads famously showed those faceless silhouettes dancing.
Huh. I remember those ads. Faceless silhouettes.
The implication being a loss of individuality, perhaps. Furthermore, the source alleges Lee Clow was instrumental in market tests that led to the selection of President Obama as the, quote, most electable canvas.
A canvas. Wow. And Thiel.
And Peter Thiel, the source alleges, was front and center in these efforts as well.
So connecting advertising, tech, political marketing, and Thiel all together.
That's the web the source presents. A confluence of forces aimed at social engineering through disruption and imaging.
This all suggests, according to the source, a highly elaborate and historically intricate web of alleged influence. Okay, let's shift gears slightly now to what the source highlights as a very disturbing report, connecting it back to these larger themes of control and maybe preparedness.
Yes, the report in question is called The National Blueprint for Biodefense.
Okay.
The source immediately draws a comparison to Event 201.
Event 201. That was the pandemic simulation exercise before COVID, right?
Exactly. The source describes it as a simulation of a COVID-like virus that actually played out, implying this pattern of predictive planning or foreshadowing.
So it sees this blueprint in a similar light.
It seems so. The specific scenario outlined in this blueprint, as presented by the source, details a biological attack.
A biological attack. When?
Happening on July 4th, 2025.
July 4th, 2025.
And it notes this was described as about a month from now at the time of the source's original recording. So very near term from that perspective.
Wow. And what does this scenario entail?
The numbers cited in this scenario are chilling. It calls for the death of 280,000 Americans on a single day.
280,000 dead.
In one day. Infecting at least 400,000 people, plus 200,000 dead and 800,000 sick animals.
Good grief, that's catastrophic.
It is. And the source emphasizes the detail that the attack in the scenario would be blamed on a foreign actor.
Okay, so a false flag element is implied in the scenario described.
That's how the source frames it. Crucially, the source also identifies key figures listed as ex officio members of the committee mentioned in the report.
Who are they?
Gerald W. Parker and George Post. They're described as veterinary scientists and gain-of-function scientists.
Gain-of-function. Explain that quickly for listeners.
Sure. Gain-of-function research essentially involves modifying a pathogen, like a virus, to enhance its functions, making it perhaps more transmissible or more virulent. Often, the stated goal is to study its potential impact and prepare defenses.
But it's controversial.
Highly controversial, yes. And the source specifically links these individuals, Parker and Post, to this type of research, including allegedly for COVID-19.
Okay, and what pathogens are mentioned in this July 4th scenario?
The pathogens referenced are Nipah virus and equine encephalitis.
Nipah and equine encephalitis, okay. Just pause for a second to consider the scale of that claim being made in the source about this blueprint.
It's definitely heavy stuff.
So given these stark projections from the blueprint, as presented by the source, how does it then weave in this idea of a pandemic 2.0? What does it suggest the implications might be?
Well, the source makes an observation. It looks at current discussions, or discussions current at the time of recording about a potential new COVID strain coming from China.
Right.
And health officials perhaps starting to recommend masking again in some places. This leads the source to ask the direct question. Is this a pandemic 2.0 that we're entering into?
So connecting the blueprint scenario to contemporary events or fears.
Exactly. It then introduces the perspective of the Austrian philosopher von Hayek.
Hayek. What's his relevance here?
Cited in the source regarding the potential abuse of public health crises, Hayek warned about using fear, specifically health scares, as a means of terrifying a population.
To what end?
To justify suspending liberties that ultimately never are recovered.
Ah, the slippery slope argument.
Precisely. The concept emphasized is that you allow an inch of the problem and you take a mile. Give up a little freedom for safety and you never get it back, or more is taken later.
And the source gives examples.
Yes, it references historical examples like anthrax back in 2001, bird flu scares, MERS, and SARS 2.0, the COVID pandemic. It frames these as instances where, in its view, power grabs occurred that suppressed liberty.
Okay. And does it connect anyone else to this July 4th scenario?
Yes, the document reiterates the claim that Tom Ridge,
The first Secretary of Homeland Security.
correct,
Yeah.
that he collaborated on this July 4th, 2025 scenario laid out in the blueprint.
Okay, so quite a set of claims connecting past events, present surveillance, and future projections.
A very intricate picture painted by the source.
Right, so just to recap for everyone listening, we've explored the claims within this document surrounding a technocratic state and Palantir's alleged central role in national surveillance. We then dove deep into the surprising and sometimes shocking historical threads, presented data collection going back decades, the concept of disruption as social engineering in Silicon Valley.
Right, the Ampex and Dolby claims too.
Exactly. And finally, we looked at the unsettling projections from the National Blueprint for Biodefense as presented in the source, including that July 4th scenario.
And the source itself, it leaves us with a concluding thought. It's aimed at empowering you, the listener.
How so?
It asserts that, quote, the more people that know about this, the more power we have to not make it happen. Which, of course, raises an important question.
It certainly does. And maybe that's the final provocative thought for you, our listener, to consider. How did these claims of historical patterns, alleged long-term plans, pre-planned scenarios, all laid out in this specific document, how do they influence your understanding of current events and future possibilities? What stands out to you as the most compelling or perhaps the most concerning connection within this intricate web of information presented by the source?
The most nightmare scenario I can imagine with AI and robotics is a world where robots have become so powerful that they are able to control or manipulate humans without their knowledge. This could lead to an oppressive society where the rights of individuals are no longer respected.